All right, everyone, it is 2 o'clock, so I want to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to thank all of you for jumping on here today. I know we all appreciate the dedication you guys have for attending these meetings, and I'm really excited to discuss today's topic of evaluations and feedback with all of you. The main points I'm really looking to cover today are how we should be conducting our evaluations, when we should be evaluating and giving feedback, and just overall why we're doing this. So my goal after today is that when I send out evals every month, nobody is opening them and saying, oh God, here we go again. I can't believe I have to do this. What's the easiest way I can get these done so Delaney will leave us alone? I want you all to learn to appreciate evaluations if you don't already. And I think, or at least hope after today that you will. The importance of evaluation and evaluating and giving feedback is really increasing in the workforce, especially with Gen Z. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to be able to keep up with this. So let's start with why we're evaluating. When people think about evaluations and giving feedback, addressing performance issues and improvements is probably the first thing that actually comes to people's mind. And for good reason, because we want our employees to be the absolute best they can be. And the only way to get them to that point is by providing them with feedback. In addition to this, however, we also need to be acknowledging the strengths of our teams and make them feel appreciated for their hard work and wanting to keep coming back for their shifts, which I know is an issue that some of us run into as well. So we also, of course, want to be setting goals for the future and setting up that plan for them to be able to be successful and giving them that direct map of how that's going to happen. And then kind of the least thought of typically, we also want to be receiving feedback from our employees and to get their insight into their own performance and experience. I mean, especially the ones who are starting out with us, we want to know what's working for them, what's not, in order to be able to retain them. So we're going to be breaking all of these down individually in the next slide, and also just kind of talk about how we should be addressing these concepts. So the first one, performance improvement, and also you'll notice that I've scattered office references all over this presentation. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but I thought it was a little bit fitting because there's actually an episode called Performance Review. It's actually pretty funny if you want to check it out. But when it comes to performance improvement, we need to be thorough, we need to be clear, and we need to be concise with what we're asking of our employees. There should be no question moving forward of what is expected from them. When it gets to the point of having to write somebody up or even terminate them for their performance, that shouldn't be a shock to the employee in the slightest. And the main way we can ensure that that doesn't happen is by following the HR motto of documenting everything. Any conversation where you're addressing performance or things that need to be improved needs to be written down and then scanned into the personal file. So it's a lot easier to be able to back up your argument to the employee by showing them on paper that the improvements were discussed rather than just saying, well, we talked about this before. So employees can actually challenge this really easily, and it can create bigger problems that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But also with this in mind, we want to make sure that the feedback is signed and acknowledged by the employee. So you're going to always have those people that are unhappy with the feedback that's been given to them, and they say, well, I'm not signing this. We need to do our best, and if not, you do need to verify on the sheet that you attempted to get them to sign it and they refused to, because again, that'll help us in the long run if other issues come up. Next, with setting goals, this is something that, as mentioned before, should be a direct map of where you'd like to see the employee and ultimately how they're going to get there. We want to take it a step further from, for example, you need to work on providing a guest first experience to you need to work on providing a guest first experience by doing X, Y, and Z. Our newer employees especially might not know how to attain a goal that's actually set for them. So they really need those specifics to be able to get there. If they don't, that's going to cause frustration. They're going to feel defeated, and ultimately it might cause them to leave as well. So a great tactic to put into play would by actually having the staff member kind of relate to you how they feel that they're doing. It gives them involvement in the evaluation process, and really kind of makes them feel like they're just not being critiqued and that they have an active voice in how they feel they're doing. So the goal setting and improvement part of evaluations, it just doesn't have to be one-sided, and it can improve motivation as well if they set the goals themselves. So you'll hear me say it 1,000 more times, but we do want to be specific with the goals that are set and give a timeline of when you'd like to see that implemented. Because if a goal for an employee would be, for example, to learn a different area, make sure that when you give them that goal, you're going to be following up on it based on a time that's set. So otherwise, if they reach, let's say, their next 6-month eval and that's not completed and you address it, they could easily argue, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do it by this time. I just thought that it was kind of something sporadic that we were going to be looking at in the future. So again, make sure that that timeline is set and that the goal is specific. So then on the more positive side of things, we also want to be acknowledging our employees when they do a great job. The overall stigma of the evaluations and feedback is that something has gone wrong, and that's not the case, and it shouldn't be the case in our stores. Giving our employees acknowledgement is a major retention piece. And again, as I mentioned, it's becoming more and more of a reason that people choose to leave a job. According to Indeed's 16 reasons why people are leaving, the number 4 reason is because they don't feel valued. So even giving them a small piece of encouragement or a piece of feedback could be what keeps them coming back the next day. People want to know that they're making an impact at their place of work and that they're contributing to a bigger picture, and they're not just a body in the restaurants. And I think that we do a good job of that being a smaller company. But again, we want to keep encouraging them the best that we can. And in addition to that, the 7th reason that people leave is that they aren't receiving feedback, and they ultimately don't know how their performance is being viewed by their manager. So in a tight labor market where people come and go like revolving doors, we need to make sure that we are giving people praise and showing the people that work for us that they do have a purpose in the operation. And this is especially important when, again, it comes to our Gen Z employees. This generation thrives on quick and consistent feedback. A lot of reasoning behind that is because we've grown up in social media world, and you post a picture, you immediately get likes, you immediately get comments, sometimes even within minutes or an hour. And that keeps people going. So when they're at work, they want that same type of recognition. I can speak to that as well as somebody in Gen Z. Just being thanked for my work honestly can change my entire day. Just knowing that I am making a difference and that my supervisors think I do a good job, that is one of the reasons that keeps me coming back to work, other than having to pay my bills. But lastly, when it comes to acknowledging strengths, and I guess this would be relative to performance improvement as well, this should be a continuous process. If you see something that needs addressed or a good job that needs to be acknowledged, you should never think, oh, well, I'll make sure that I bring that up in their next evaluation. If you see something, address it on the spot. Somebody that comes in for a shift that might not get that acknowledgement, they could not come back tomorrow. I mean, we've all seen it where you think that everything's going great, and then the employee that you worked with for a day, you never see again. So that one piece of praise can really impact somebody coming back. And then for feedback from employees, I mean, evaluations are a fantastic time to check in on the employee. We have a lot of terminations that come through as coded no call, no show, or job abandonment. And people kind of find it hard to pinpoint why that particular employee didn't come back. So, a great way to avoid this is to continuously check in with the employees and see what concerns or struggles they might be having. That way, it can be addressed, it can be improved, and you might avoid dealing with somebody that clocks in one day and then you never see again. This absolutely doesn't mean that you should only be checking in on them during their 6-month or annual review period. We actually have it in the works to kind of start conducting stay interviews, which I know we've talked about before, and we're kind of looking into it. But evals are said to be a structured time to be talking to your staff. So you can almost kill two birds with one stone by providing feedback while simultaneously receiving feedback yourself. Let them tell you how they think they're doing before you give your side. I mean, by doing this, it opens up conversations and it might ease the sometimes stressful stigma of being evaluated, especially for those newer or younger employees who are still kind of finding their way in things. So 90-day evals for this reason are extremely important when it comes to receiving feedback about the employee's experience thus far. So with all of these great retention and feedback practices in mind, why do I still get some death glares when I hand out evals at corporate meetings? The three main reasons why there's some resistance to evals that I've discovered from some of the managers are time, fear of upsetting the employee by giving them constructive criticism, and having long-term staff. So let's address this at this point and see if maybe it makes a little bit more sense. But when it comes to time, I know that you are all extremely busy. I mean, the more and more that I visit stores, I leave with a feeling that I'm not sure if I could do what you all do. So that is definitely not trying to discredit any of your time or act like you have all of the time in the world, because I know that you guys all have full plates. However, as we've discussed, finding times to do evals is crucial to keep your store staffed and to keep your operation running. As a talent manager, I have firsthand knowledge of how many applicants your stores get, broken down by position, experience, how often they're coming in. I'm aware of how tight the labor market is and how hard it is to bring in employees, as well as retaining them with how often people are leaving. So that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that our employees are receiving feedback. So we're not only retaining the people that we have, but also improving their skills on a consistent basis. So, I mean, just in general, taking the time to evaluate could prove to be less timely than having to replace an employee that doesn't feel acknowledged. My next point, and it might seem like I'm completely contradicting everything that I just said, but we still have, a lot of locations that are understaffed. And some people feel like if they address performance issues, then people will get upset and leave. Why this might seem contradictory is because for this aspect of things, I'm saying to take the risk. People will find a reason to leave if they want to. So if that reason comes from being provided feedback, then so be it. I mean, you could look at an employee, and if they don't like the color of your eyes, they might leave the store. So while anyone leaving is not the ideal situation, I could play devil's advocate and say giving feedback might actually be the thing that gets somebody to stay. To be recognized for anything, even improvement, is much better than an employee showing up for work and feeling that their manager doesn't care about what they're doing. And I guess the best case or the best scenario that I can think of at this point is kind of like a toddler that acts out to get attention. even if it gets them in trouble, the parent is still acknowledging them. So they're winning by throwing the fit. So we want to do everything that we can to prevent turnover at this point, but we also can't be afraid to address concerns because of that. We also don't just want warm bodies in our restaurants. We want hardworking people who want to improve themselves as much as we want them to improve. And then lastly, with long-term employees, you might feel like you have written down the same evaluation for the same person 1,000 times, and it's a waste to continue to do that. And I understand that, again, some people are just consistent and they're great employees, and that's a wonderful problem to have. But one of the reasons people have been with us so long is because they are great employees, and there's always room for people to improve or learn something new. So for those of you who have been at Campbell U recently and heard me talk about evals, you're probably getting ready to roll your eyes. But I always like to say that no employee is perfect except for me. And for those of you who didn't just log off when I said that, we need to remember that even employees who have been in the same position with us for years, they might not want to remain stagnant. If we have hardworking long-term employees who want to be challenged, it's better to keep them on our team and have them receive opportunities with us instead of seeking elsewhere. So we don't want them to feel like just because they've been with Haas's or Marzoni's for years that we don't recognize their work, that we don't appreciate their talent, and ultimately that we don't want them to continuously improve with us, because of course we do. We want everybody to improve regardless of how long they've been with us. So let's say that the past 15 minutes or so you feel has been a waste of your time, and I don't know what I'm talking about, and you're going to continue to not evaluate. More power to you. But let's talk about the worst things that can happen if you don't evaluate or provide feedback moving forward. First of all, Brenda can tell you she has a tight-knit relationship with the unemployment office, because even employees that never start with us are still trying to get unemployment money. That's an easy situation to handle because they haven't started with us. But what about when somebody actually does work with us and gets let go because of performance? How do we back that up? You guessed it. Evaluations, write-ups, all of that. There is an upload option through the unemployment website that is set specifically to provide documentation for the employee. If we terminate somebody for performance and we look at the most recent evaluation, and for every section, it just says the word good, and that person also got a 50-cent raise, that person is going to get unemployment. On the other side, if we terminate someone for attendance, we look at their most recent evaluation and it says, Brenda, you called off twice in the past month without getting someone to cover your shift. This really puts the business and your coworkers in a tough situation. We really need to see improvement. In addition to that, we have 2 write-ups. The last one stating, if this doesn't improve, you will be terminated. That puts us in a much better situation and a lot better chance of the unemployment request being denied. Taking it a step further, though, if we terminate somebody for performance and don't have documentation to back it up, and the eval is perfect, it says that it's the best worker that we've had in 100 years, the employee could claim discrimination. The only way to protect ourselves from this is to make sure that we have the proof that feedback was given and it was acknowledged or stated that the employee refused to sign it. Taking the time to document completely outweighs the time and cost associated with a discrimination charge. And we also talked earlier about the low morale an employee who is not provided feedback and acknowledged can experience, but we didn't touch on the morale of the other employees in the restaurant. For example, if I show up on time for my shift every day, I complete all of my tasks, I go above and beyond, and I have a coworker that is consistently late, hides in the freezer so they don't have to do work, and there's no consequences for that, why would I show up on time? Why would I work hard if I know that nothing's going to happen to me and that what I'm doing doesn't really make a difference? It's kind of like this sibling mentality of, well, why should I have to do the dishes when my sister doesn't have to? Similarly, if you're doing the same job as a coworker and their performance issues slow down the operation, affect your responsibilities, but your supervisor doesn't address that with them, it can be very frustrating and demotivating for the employees. So choosing to ignore performance improvements may keep a subpar employee, but it could also cause you to lose a hardworking one. And of course, that brings us back to turnover. I should correct what I said earlier about us not wanting to lose employees and instead say that we don't want to lose good employees. We need to be smart about the way that we provide feedback in order to make sure that our hard workers, if we're going to lose anybody, are the ones to stay. So, what can you take away from this call? First of all, the evaluation and feedback process should not be a drive-by where you hand employees a paper and say, read this evaluation and let me know if you have any questions. You should be sitting down with them. You should be showing them that they are worth your time. Make them feel appreciated. I receive a lot of evaluations that say, Delaney was great in this area. We shouldn't be talking about people in the third person, because even though you're submitting the evals to me to scan into their files, you should be addressing them. It's a direct communication between you and the employee. So instead, write, you are great in this area, because the evaluation is for them. I'll say it one last time, but you also need to be thorough with evaluations and feedback. I should never, ever, ever see an eval that comes through blank or that has one word on them or just has a smiley face, because I have seen all of them. We need to be providing feedback, especially if you're giving somebody a raise. If it comes through blank in all of the sections, we don't know what they did to deserve that raise. Same thing if they don't get a raise. If they have a blank sheet, then there's no way to back that up of, what they could have done or what they might have improved on that would have given them a raise. So, excuse me. Next, the evaluation is not a roast. Give them the praise that they deserve. If you can't find strengths to give them, maybe you need to reevaluate their employment, because any of your employees should at least have a few strengths that you can acknowledge during this process. People want to know what they're doing well. Make it a conversation. Have back and forth interaction. You shouldn't be speaking at them for the entirety of the evaluation. Help them to get involved, especially, again, the newer employees that might be sweating at the fact of having an evaluation done on them 3 months in. Make it casual, make them feel comfortable, and just talk to them. Find out what's going well, find out what they think they could be doing better, and then give your professional advice as well. And finally, work as a management team. Somebody that you're evaluating could work completely differently under a different manager. So by conversing with the rest of your management staff, you could find out some things that you wouldn't think to write down as an improvements, or some things that you wouldn't think to write down as strengths. You don't all have to hold the pen together and write it, but just talk through your thoughts and talk about what you were planning to address and see if there's anything that could be added from the staff. From your team. Don't let the staff write their own evaluation. And as a grand finale of this presentation, I do want to let everyone know that I am updating the evaluation sheet. It is going to be 10 pages long, just kidding. But ultimately, I just wanted to make some adjustments to what we have, because there's a lot of repetition in those things. There's a lot of information congested into sections that kind of prevents different areas from being addressed because of how much is there. So overall, I just think it could be a little bit shorter and easier to navigate. So it is still a work in progress. I want to make sure that it is 100% ready to go before I present it to anyone. But I would really, really appreciate anybody's feedback on what you think could be improved. Ultimately, you guys are the ones filling these out every month. So I definitely would benefit from anything that any of you would want to throw in there and make sure that this is as effective and easy for you guys by still attaining what we're trying to attain as possible. Whenever I do finalize it, I am going to request that some stores volunteer to almost do a test run with it before we would expand it throughout all of the other stores. So if your location would be interested in testing it out, again, I would be really appreciative. I want to make sure that this is something good. So with that, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, even if you want to throw something out here while you have other managers present that you think could be a little bit different on the evals, just to kind of get some conversation going and figure out what you think's important these last 5 minutes, then please feel free to do so. If not, I would ask that you do relay what I told you to the other managers and your staff, if you are friends with any other managers in the district that weren't able to make this meeting, about possibly doing the test run, sending me feedback, all of that. So does anyone have anything before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for jumping on today. Again, we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to do this. Again, all suggestions or any feedback, comments, please email me, give me a call. I'm always open to talk about things that could be changed or improved in the restaurant. So thank you again and have a great rest of your day.